All right, so you're a pastor or a Bible study leader, and you're looking for a fresh take on Philippians 4 to 9 for an upcoming sermon or study.
And you want to go deeper than just telling everyone to be happy, right?
Exactly. You want something more than just the typical feel-good stuff.
Well, you've come to the right place.
We dug through tons of commentaries and sermons on this passage
Yeah, different denominations, different preaching styles, the whole gamut.
to find some unique perspectives, some things that really stand out.
We're talking about stuff that really resonates with people.
And we're going to share those insights and even some illustrations that we found.
And we'll also take a look at how different pastors have tackled this verse in their sermons.
So you can kind of see what's worked for them and what's connected with their congregations.
Sounds good.
Let's jump right in.
One thing that really struck me was how many pastors emphasize joy as a constant.
Not just a fleeting feeling.
Right.
It's not about feeling happy all the time.
Yeah, it's more like a state of being.
It's about having this underlying joy that sustains you. No matter what's going on around you,
Exact.
it's not dependent on your circumstances.
One sermon even compared it to how New Yorkers navigate the chaos of the city.
They just roll with it.
They expect the unexpected.
What do you think about that analogy?
I think it's spot on.
It really highlights the difference between joy and happiness.
Happiness is fleeting.
It comes and goes,
It's dependent on external things.
but joy runs deeper,
It's rooted in something more solid,
like our relationship with God.
of faith.
It's a foundation that can't be shaken.
So it's not about being happy because things are going well.
Right. It's about having this underlying joy that sustains you regardless of what's happening around you.
Exactly. And that leads to a really interesting question.
How do we cultivate that kind of resilience?
Yeah, because let's face it,
Life is full of curveballs.
anxiety is a real struggle for a lot of people.
Absolutely. One pastor actually suggested that we should anticipate those attacks on our peace and joy. He used the illustration of New York City taxi drivers.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it.
They see it all.
Fender benders, near misses.
People yelling crazy stuff.
But they just keep going.
They're unfazed.
It's almost like they expect it.
And that expectation helps them stay calm.
And he tied that back to Philippians 4.
Saying we should prepare ourselves for those moments when our peace is challenged.
Interesting.
By expecting turmoil, we're less likely to be completely thrown off when it inevitably comes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
How do we build that spiritual resilience?
I don't know about you.
But I can't just flip a switch and turn off anxiety.
Me neither. It feels a lot deeper than that.
You're right. It is. And one of the things that several pastors pointed to was the actual Greek word for anxiety used in this passage.
Which is
Merimnao.
Merimnao. I've never really thought about that. What's so special about that word?
It literally means to be in pieces.
Wow.
It emphasizes that fragmented state of mind that anxiety creates.
That's powerful.
It really captures that feeling of being pulled in different directions.
Like your mind is scattered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And thinking about anxiety this way can be really helpful.
Especially when you're trying to explain it to someone.
You know, for pastors and Bible study leaders who are crafting sermons or leading discussions,
It gives them a way to help people visualize what's happening internally.
instead of just telling people to not be anxious.
Right. You can actually help them understand what anxiety is.
And then you can offer practical steps towards finding wholeness.
So it's not about suppressing anxiety
It's about addressing that underlying fragmentation.
and putting those pieces back together.
Precisely. And one way to do that, which a few of the sermons touched on, is by speaking truth to ourselves.
Like positive self-talk.
It's more than just positive thinking.
Okay.
It's about intentionally reminding ourselves of God's promises.
And our identity in Him,
Like in Psalm 42,
where David talks to his own soul.
"Why are you downcast, O my soul?"
Hope in God
It's about shifting our focus
from our anxieties.
to the truth of who God is and what He has done for us.
So instead of getting stuck in those negative thought spirals, we intentionally redirect our minds to God's truth.
Exactly. And that can be a powerful tool for cultivating peace and joy.
Even in the midst of difficult circumstances.
Absolutely.
You know, that reminds me of another powerful image one pastor used.
Oh, yeah.
He was talking about the difference between genuine peace and a more superficial kind of calm.
Okay.
And he brought up the Marlboro Man ads.
Oh, I remember that one. That was a good one.
All rugged individualism.
Appearing stoic and in control.
But as the pastor pointed out, that image often masks a lack of true joy.
A lack of genuine connection.
The kind that comes from a deep relationship with God.
It's a great illustration of how we can sometimes project an image of peace.
while internally there's a void.
It's a good reminder that true peace isn't about suppressing our emotions,
It's about having a foundation that can withstand the storms.
and that foundation is our relationship with God.
So where does that foundation come from?
What are some of the practical steps that these pastors suggested for cultivating that kind of deep, lasting peace?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear that.
Well, unsurprisingly, prayer and thanksgiving were at the top of the list.
Makes sense.
Several pastors really unpacked the how-to of prayer,
Interesting.
emphasizing that it's not just about asking for things.
Right.
It's about petitioning, laying out your requests clearly, and always giving thanks.
So it's about approaching prayer as a disciplined practice.
A process that leads us toward peace.
Not just a quick help me and then back to our worries.
Right. And one pastor even went as far as to quote C.S. Lewis,
Okay.
encouraging people to run up the sunbeam to the sun.
Have you heard that one before?
Oh, yeah, it's a classic.
What a beautiful way to put it.
But what does it actually mean?
I'll admit sometimes I struggle to really grasp it.
It means focusing on the source of our blessings, which is God, rather than getting distracted by the blessings themselves.
So it's about keeping our eyes on the giver, not just the gifts.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it ties in perfectly with the importance of Thanksgiving, right?
Right.
It's about recognizing where those blessings come from and cultivating an attitude of gratitude, regardless of our circumstances.
Absolutely. And when we do that, when we focus on the giver rather than the gifts, we begin to experience a joy that transcends circumstances.
It's a joy that's rooted in something much deeper and more enduring than our ever-changing emotions or external situations.
You know, that makes me think of another illustration that one pastor used.
What's that?
He was talking about God's timing.
Oh, yeah.
And he used the analogy of giving car keys to a child.
Interesting.
He made the point that just like handing over car keys before someone is ready can be dangerous. God's blessings come in his timing, even though we might be impatient.
Right. We want things now.
But God's timing is perfect, even if it doesn't always feel perfect to us in the moment.
That's such a great analogy.
And it ties in so well with what we were just discussing about trusting in God's goodness and provision.
It's about surrendering our own desires and timelines.
To his perfect plan.
Absolutely.
And that surrender, that trust in God's timing, is a key part of finding that deep, abiding peace that Paul talks about in Philippians.
It's about letting go of our need to control everything.
And trusting that God knows what he's doing.
And that he has our best interests at heart.
Even when we can't see it.
Exactly. And that's a really important message for people to hear, especially when they're going through a difficult season.
It's a reminder that even when things feel chaotic and uncertain, even when our peace is challenged, God is still in control.
And his timing is perfect.
And that trust in his timing, that surrender to his will, is essential for experiencing the kind of joy that Paul describes in Philippians.
A joy that isn't dependent on our circumstances.
But is rooted in the unshakable truth of God's love and faithfulness.
You got it. And sometimes that means waiting on those blessings, you know?
Yeah.
While still choosing joy in the present moment.
That's tough though, isn't it?
It is. It is.
When you're in the middle of something difficult, it's hard to feel joyful.
Oh, absolutely.
And
It's like a...
Yeah.
You know how Paul tells us to think about such things?
Oh.
Whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable.
Yeah, it's like he's giving us this mental checklist
Right.
for dealing with anxiety.
Exactly. And it's not just about positive thinking, you know?
Right.
It's about actively directing our minds toward what is good.
What's worthy of praise.
Will build us up.
Because what we focus on shapes our reality.
100%.
Yeah.
It's like you become what you think about.
Right. And this isn't about ignoring the negative stuff.
Yeah, I know.
It's not about pretending everything's perfect.
It's about making a choice.
You focus on what will ultimately bring us peace.
And that brings us back to the idea of putting those pieces back together, you know?
Yeah.
Finding wholeness in the midst of our fragmented lives.
Right, because when we focus on God's truth,
Mm.
his goodness, his promises,
It changes things.
Yeah.
It starts to shift our perspective.
it's like those pieces start to click back into place.
And that feeling of being overwhelmed by anxiety starts to subside.
And that's where the final verse of this passage comes in.
Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice.
That's like Paul saying, okay, enough talking, now go do it.
Exactly.
Don't just listen to my words, live them out.
Because true peace and joy aren't just concepts.
They're a way of life.
And that way of life is rooted in action.
in putting our faith into practice.
And when we do that, the passage promises the God of peace will be with you.
So it's not just about finding peace on our own,
It's about experiencing the presence of the God of peace.
which changes
It
everything.
makes all the difference.
It sustains us, it strengthens us,
Gives us the resilience to face those challenges.
whatever comes our way.
Thinking about all this from the perspective of pastors and Bible study leaders,
Yeah,
it's such a rich source of inspiration for teaching and preaching.
it really is. It goes beyond the superficial.
It offers practical tools for cultivating lasting peace and joy.
And it's not just about individual transformation.
It's about building a community
of people who support each other
who encourage each other.
on this journey.
Right, because remember that Greek word for anxiety, merimna?
Uh-huh.
It means to be in pieces.
Right.
So finding wholeness isn't just an individual pursuit.
It's something we do together.
In community,
It's about knowing you're not alone in your struggles.
that there are people who understand,
Who care?
who want to help you put those pieces back together.
And that's the beauty of this passage.
It's not just a set of rules or platitudes,
It's an invitation to a deeper, more fulfilling way of life.
a life marked by joy, peace, and the unwavering presence of the God of peace.
And that's a message worth sharing with the world.
Especially in a world that's so often filled with anxiety and uncertainty.
This deep dive into Philippians 4:4-9 has given us so much to think about,
It really has.
both for ourselves and for those we serve.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and difficulty,
Yeah.
there's a path to peace
And the stores of joy.
that can never be taken away.
And that's a message that never gets old.
It's always relevant.
Always timely.
It's always worth exploring.
I couldn't agree more. And you know what else is interesting about this whole peace thing?
What's that?
It's not just about us.
It's not just about our own experience.
Yeah. There's this ripple effect.
Tell me more.
When we cultivate this deep-rooted joy and peace,
Yeah.
it impacts how we interact with the world.
It influences our relationships.
Our work, our everyday encounters.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's like a...
Like anxiety can be contagious.
Yeah, but so can peace.
Exactly. When you encounter someone who radiates joy and peace,
Uh-huh.
it just has this calming effect.
It's almost disarming.
It makes you want to tap into that same source of peace.
For yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this passage in Philippians so powerful.
It's not just about our own transformation.
Right.
It's about being a beacon of peace.
In a world that desperately needs it.
For pastors and Bible study leaders,
Yeah.
that's a huge responsibility.
It really is. It's not just about teaching these principles.
Right.
It's about embodying them
Living them out.
in a way that inspires others.
Because people can spot a fake.
Oh, yeah.
They can tell when it's not
A
genuine.
mile away.
But when they see authentic joy and peace,
It's powerful.
it's contagious.
It's like that saying, preach the gospel at all times. Use words if necessary.
Yeah, I like that.
Our lives become the message.
Our actions speak louder than words,
And that message can be incredibly powerful.
especially when it comes to something like peace.
You know, one thing we haven't talked about specifically is the role of community in all of this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We talked about Merimnao.
To be in pieces.
Right. So how can the support of other believers help us find wholeness?
How can community help us put those pieces back together?
We weren't created to do this alone.
Definitely not.
The Christian life is meant to be lived in community.
We need each other.
We need people to support us, to encourage
To
us,
help us when we're struggling.
and to help us get back up when we fall.
And dust ourselves off and keep moving forward.
It's about creating a space where people feel safe
Safe to be vulnerable.
to share their struggles.
To ask for help.
For pastors and Bible study leaders.
Yeah.
That's a key takeaway from this whole deep dive.
It's not just about teaching and preaching. It's about fostering connection
Belonging.
within their congregations.
Sometimes just knowing you're not alone.
Makes all the difference.
It can be the difference between feeling overwhelmed and feeling hopeful.
Between giving up and persevering.
So as you continue to explore Philippians 4:4-9,
And as you prepare to share these truths with others,
think about how you can cultivate community,
how can you create an environment where people feel safe?
where they can experience the healing power of belonging
Because when we come together
and support each other,
and point each other back to the source of our hope,
we can experience a level of peace and joy.
that truly transcends our circumstances
And that's a message worth sharing.
with the world.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into Philippians 4:4-9.
I feel like we covered a lot.
We explored the idea of joy as a constant.
Not just a feeling,
We talked about anxiety.
that feeling of being in pieces.
We talked about the power of focusing on what's good and true.
and how that can shape our reality,
We discuss prayer and thanksgiving
trusting in God's timing
and the vital role of community.
as we journey towards wholeness,
As you reflect on this passage,
go deeper,
ask questions
and discover new insights
that will help you cultivate lasting peace and joy.
in your own life and the lives of those you serve.
Because the journey to peace is ongoing.
But the destination is worth the effort.
And with that, we'll leave you to ponder these truths.
And discover the transformative power of Philippians 4:4-9.
Until next time, may the God of peace be with you.
And also with you.